didn't just come for his big mission. If you turn to the page 406, he's thinking, it was not men's grief, but their joy Christ visited. He worked his miracle to help men's gladness, his first miracle. His mother knew that he came not only to make his great, terrible sacrifice, she knew that his heart was open even to the simple, artless merrymaking of some obscure and unlearned people who had warmly bidden him to their poor wedding. Mine hour is not yet come. That means it's not part of the great story, you see. There are compilations of the gospel, taking the four gospels and making one story out of it. And very often they leave out this because it's extraneous to the real story, you see. Mine hour is not yet come, he said with a soft smile. And indeed, was it to make wine abundant at poor weddings he had come down to earth? They must have been poor, they didn't have enough wine at a wedding. Was it to make wine abundant at poor weddings that he came to earth? And the answer is yes. That is, he came to show us that the good deeds are the small ones you can have the power to do at every moment of your life. And then in the rest of Alyosha's sort of reverie, he imagines that he himself, he dreams, is at the Feast of Cana of Galilee. You see, in heaven, it's eternal. It's always going on. The significance is always going on. That's what he imagines. And there, at the feast, he sees Father Zosima. Why are you so surprised? He said. Everybody here gave an onion. Quotation therefore appears twice. Gave an onion. I gave an onion, and you today gave an onion. That's what goodness consists of. And so we are all here, the eternal feast of Cana of Galilee. You see, Dostoevsky is taking the idea of the small deed, the small act of kindness, and giving it a religious significance. You're going to see that Tolstoy also comes up with a very similar notion of what goodness is, but he doesn't attach it to any religious meaning. It's just a fact of the world. But here, Dostoevsky is making it a timeless spiritual truth. And Alyosha, this is where Alyosha, he changes. He falls down on the earth, and he rises up, a kind of champion. His faith is now firm. He knows what he believes and what he must do. It's the crucial change in his life that is just taking place here. The crucial change really in Dmitri's life comes later. If you go to page 575, this is after he's been arrested and going through all those humiliations. He has a dream. Remember, he was driving somewhere in the steppes, the Great Russian Plains, where he had been stationed long ago, and a peasant was driving him in a cart. It was cold, it was early in November. Not far off was a village. You could see the black huts, and half the huts were burnt down, and there were only the charred beams standing up. And as they drove in, there were peasant women drawn up along the road, a lot of women, a whole row, all thin and wan, with their faces a sort of brownish color, especially one at the edge, a tall, bony woman who looked 40, but might have been only 20, because of the life she's led, with a long, thin face. And in her arms was a little baby crying, and her breasts seemed so dried up that there was not a drop of milk in them, and the child cried and held out its little bare arms with its little fists, blue from cold. Why are they crying? Why are they crying? Mitya asked as they dashed gaily by. It's the babe, answered the driver. The babe is weeping. And Mitya was struck by his saying, in his peasant way, the babe. And he liked the peasants calling it a babe. This is hard to translate, but you get the idea. There seemed more pity in it. But why is it weeping? Mitya persisted stupidly. Why are its little arms bare? The baby's cold. Its little clothes are frozen and don't warm it. But why, foolish Mitya persisted. Why, they're poor people, they have no bread, they've been burned out. No, Mitya, as it were, still did not understand. Tell me why it is those mothers stand there. Why are people poor? Why is the babe poor? Why is the step barren? Why don't they hug each other and kiss? Why don't they sing songs of joy? Why are they so dark from black misery? Why don't they feed the babe? See, he's gone from, why is this babe suffering, to why is there suffering? Why is there any suffering? Why don't people just hug each other? This is, you go from, it's what he, of course, has done with why is such a man alive, where the question has been implicit, why is there any evil? Here, that's the explicit question. And he felt that though his questions were unreasonable and senseless, yet he wanted to ask just that, and he had to ask it in just that way. And he felt such a passion of pity, such as he had never known before, was rising in his heart, that he wanted to cry, that he wanted to do something for them all, so that the babe should weep no more, so that the dark-faced, dried-up mother should not weep, that no one should shed tears again from that moment. And he wanted to do it at once, regardless of all obstacles, with all the recklessness of the Karamazovs. And I am coming with you. I won't leave you now for the rest of my life. I'm coming with you, he heard Grushenka. He wants to do it all at once. Of course, you can't do it all at once. That's just what Alyosha has just learned, right? And the impulse to goodness is there. His first one completely to devote himself to it. And then he turns around. He guessed that he'd been asleep. And at the very bottom of the page, he was suddenly struck by the fact that there was a pillow under his head, which hadn't been there when he had leaned back, exhausted on the chest. Who put that pillow under my head? Who was so kind, he cried, with a sort of ecstatic gratitude and tears in his voice, as though some great kindness had been shown him. He never found out who this kind man was, perhaps one of the peasant witnesses. But his whole soul was quivering with tears. You see, the pillow is also an onion. He's gone immediately from all the reckless of the Karamazov to solve everything at once, to recognizing what the real act of kindness that makes a difference looks like. So the pillow is the onion, is the pound of nuts. This moment, which doesn't help his case at all, and they all are looking at him as if he's nuts to think that this is important. But it is important because this is where his soul turns around. Well, a little further on, we get another really interesting chapter. And it's with when Alyosha goes to see Lise. And remember, Lise has been visited by Ivan, whose negativism, whose sense of the evil of the world, whose sense of hopelessness really has been so profound, and Lise already is in a spiritual state of mind to be receptive to that. And this is when Alyosha speaks to her. And if you turn to page 664, in the chapter called The Little Demon. It's called The Little Demon because this is a book about evil, and it's building up to the appearance of the devil. He's going to be an image of what evil is. She says to Alyosha, "You're awfully cross because I don't talk about holy things. I don't want to be holy. Holy do to one in the next world for the greatest sin. You must know all about that," she's saying contemptuously. This fool. God will send you, Alyosha was watching her steadily. He's not talking about fire and brimstone, you understand. You'll just feel that you've done wrong. That one punishment. That's just what I should like. I would go up and they would censure me and I would burst out laughing in their faces. In a sense, even Ivan, when returning the ticket, which is the equivalent scene, isn't laughing. I should dreadfully like to set fire to the house, Alyosha, to our house. You still don't believe me? Why? There are children of 12 who have a longing to set fire to something, and they do set things on fire. It's a sort of disease. That's not true. That's not true. There may be children. That's not what I mean. if he's really I have a philosophical insight about the world and you're calling it a disease, you're medicalizing it, well, if I don't think the way you do, I must be sick. It's a real insult, as you presume, right? As I think pretty much anyone would. You take evil for good. It's a passing crisis. It's the result of your illness, perhaps. You do despise me, though, with an explanation like that. It's something that I don't want to do good. I want to do evil, and it has nothing to do with illness. Why do evil? There's the question of the book. Why do evil, right? So that everything might be destroyed. Listen, what she's saying is, you do evil not to accomplish some other purpose. Evil is something you value for its own sake. It doesn't go any deeper than that. Of course you can do evil for a goal, but evil is something we desire for its own sake. Freud would call that the death instinct, the instinct of destruction. But that's not what that's already giving it some other interpretation. Here, it's just as human beings have an original passion for good, to help others, they also have an original passion for evil. It's not as if, well, we only do evil because we think it's going to be good, but it's actually not good, which is a much more standard, polite way of looking at humanity. You see, people don't really want to do evil. Just listen to Robert Keaton say, bad social conditions make them think they want to do evil so that they can get gain. But in fact, it's not true. And if we just educate them, but they won't be an evil. There's no deep reason for evil. Yes, it goes right down to the bottom. And if you look at what human beings have done to each other, just look in the last 100 years, this certainly is a lot more plausible description of humanity. If empirical facts mean anything to you, the last 100 years seems to suggest we do have an original passion. Otherwise, it's really hard to explain what's happened. Then the next point becomes, she says, look, it's not just that we have an original passion for evil. Because we have that passion, we like to see evil done by others, even when we don't dare to do it ourselves. If we're not going to satisfy it ourselves, because we're afraid to, we like seeing it. Look, why do people get fascinated by trials of great criminals? Wow, I can't get more of the O.J. Simpson or something like this, right? Charles Manson, all of them, right? They just capture the popular imagination. Horror movies do this sort of thing. Or, look, traffic reporters like to refer to something they call a gaper's delay, which is the traffic is slowed down because there's been a really, really bloody accident by the side of the road, and everybody's, wow, can I see some blood there? Nothing's blocking the road, but the slowdown is because people can gape at human suffering. We are drawn to it. Well, that is what these, you see, is saying is the case here. On page 665, there are moments when people love crime. Not the proceeds of crime, you said. Crime, said Alyosha thoughtfully. Yes, you have uttered my thought. They love crime. Everyone loves crime. They love it always, not at some moments. It's as though people have made an agreement to lie about it, and have lied about it ever since. They all declare they hate evil, and secretly they all love it. Are you still reading nasty books? Yes, I am. Mama reads them and hides them under her pillow, and I steal them. She hides them, pretending not to, but I'm open about it. Aren't you ashamed to destroy yourself? I want to destroy myself. There's a boy here who lay down between the railway lines when the train was passing. Lucky fellow. Listen, your brother is being tried now for murdering his father, and everyone loves his having killed his father. Loves his having killed his father? Yes, loves it. Everyone loves it. Everybody says it's so awful, but secretly they simply love it. I, for one, love it. There is some truth in what you say about everyone. It's hard else to explain how we are drawn to reports of crime. We all desire evil. You can imagine that for Freud, for whom parricide was the primal crime, he just loved this passage. But he thought that the three great works of world literature were Socrates' Oedipus, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and this book. And all, interestingly enough, they're all to do with murdering the father. People, when you get to the scene of the trial in book 12, remember there were all the society women there who love Dmitri precisely because they think he is guilty. And it's fascinating. And of course, they know all the latest liberal ideas that he's not responsible for the environment, all the things that defense attorney is going to use. And of course, they hope that he will be acquitted because that will prove the triumph of liberal ideas. But they also love, it's really sexy to be a criminal like that, right? It's interesting, it's compelling. They just love it. And whenever there are these great, periodically there are always these trials where something like that attracts people's attention. And fashionable opinion will be on that person's side, you see. And this is why Ivan, who is, by the time you get to the trial, is out of his mind, testifies and he says, simply, among his all incoherent statements is, you all want to kill your fathers. Well, now we go to a sequence with Ivan and Smerdyakov. 3 interviews with Smerdyakov. We can begin on page, let's say 695. There are 3 interviews here, okay? Now remember that what's happened. Smerdyakov has ensnared Ivan by using his own technique of talking in code. If he had come out and said directly, hey, let's have a compact here to bump off the old man, you'll get the inheritance, of course Ivan would have gotten up and beaten him to a pulp. He wants to wish, but he doesn't want to be part of it. But if Smerdyakov just sort of hints around it, so that the part of Ivan that wishes it won't object, and he sets it up so that you'd have to take an action not to be part of the conspiracy. Well, then the wish will be what governs. Of course, at any point, Ivan could have directed his attention, stopped his technique of not to think, and thought, why exactly am I having these feelings of wanting to beat Smerdyakov? He could have examined it and realized, but this is how evil happens. We wish, and therefore we direct our attention to something else. But that's the choice. Okay? Yes, it's possible to pass a lie detector. I knew nothing about it. But the question is not whether you knew anything, but whether you made sure not to know anything about it. And that's typically how evil happens. If there's going to be some news source which is going to show you something that would contradict what you want to believe, you just don't read it. You don't listen to it. You don't talk to people. You make sure not to know. I didn't know. You can't blame me. And we do that in our daily life. We just make sure not to know. This is what Ivan has done. This is how Smerdyakov set it up. But as Ivan does reflect later, he starts asking him, he feels something is wrong here, radically wrong. Why? Why, he thinks? What did he mean when he said, it's always worthwhile talking to a clever man? Why did he speak as if there was some compact between us? Why did I look at my father on the staircase like that? And why, when I was going away did I say to myself, I'm a scoundrel. Why? Well, he goes back to talk to Smerdyakov to figure out what's happening. Now, Smerdyakov does not tell him right away what happened. He's toying with him. He's leading him step by step to recognize each awful thing he's done behind his done. Ivan comes to Smerdyakov to decode their coded conversations. And Smerdyakov apparently decodes it with a new code. Okay? Which Ivan realizes when he says, well, if you don't talk about this, I won't. If you don't talk about our conversation at the gate, I won't talk about your saying you can share fits. Well, wait a minute. Why would they have to do that if he was suddenly open? So this first conversation decodes their interviews with a new code. Ivan is unsatisfied, so he comes back for a second one, which decodes the first code, but it's a new code. And only in the third one does Smerdyakov let it out. What really happened? So if you look at it, you see, also his tone keeps changing. The first time he's a little bit surly, but by the last one, he's speaking of him with such utter contempt that you wouldn't expect a servant to speak at all. He's talking down to Ivan like some lower being, because he has him in the palm of his hand. The first interview, you see, he keeps suggesting that, well, you see, what I was trying to say was, you shouldn't go away because Dmitri might commit the murder. Well, you should have been more direct. But the point here is, you see that, well, Dmitri must have committed the murder. And so it's sort of, well, Dmitri would have done it anyway. It's kind of what Ivan can say to himself. It's not quite as bad as it could be. And it ends with, his chief feeling was one of relief that it was not Smerdyakov but Mitya who had committed the murder, though he might have been expected to feel the opposite, because Mitya is his brother, after all. He did not want to analyze the reason for this feeling, and even felt a positive repugnance at prying into his sensations. More not thinking, okay? He felt as though he wanted to make a haste to forget something. Again, this is not thinking, forgetting, not inquiring. This is where evil comes from. He begins to ask himself why he had crept out on the stairs like a thief. Why he called himself a scoundrel. And he asks Alyosha, when I said one reptile will devour the other, did you think I desired father's death and was even prepared to help bring it about? Well, said Alyosha, I have to confess, I did think so. So he goes back. Now Smerdyakov is no longer in the hospital, and you get this wonderful passage which really raises disgust in you. Where he is, cockroaches are swarming in such amazing numbers that they have to talk louder over the rustling of the cockroaches. It's an amazing image. And here, Smerdyakov now, Ivan rushes in and says, were you threatening me? Decode it all, tell me it all. But Smerdyakov will not do that. He says, well, what I really meant was that you, knowing beforehand of the murder of your own parent, left him to his fate, and perhaps something else too. Something else was that you probably too were very desirous of your father's death. So you wanted it. You didn't just allow it to happen. You wanted it. But he's still doing it as if Dmitri had actually carried it out. So I had fixed on Dmitri to do the murder? Well, how could you help reckoning on him? If I had reckoned anyone, it would have been you. I remember my impression. Well, I thought so too. And in fact, you were giving me permission to kill your parent. He's leading him up to it. And again, he remembers the scene on the staircase. If I don't kill Smerdyakov, life is not worth living. And he says to Katerina Ivanovna, if it's not Dmitri but Smerdyakov who's the murderer, I share his guilt, for I put him up to it. Whether I did, I don't know yet. But if he is the murderer and not Dmitri, then of course I am the murderer too, entering this compact. Now he's gotten that wrong. From the moral point of view, whether Dmitri had done the murder or Smerdyakov had done the murder, Ivan was part of it. If he left so that the murder would happen, what difference does it make how the murder? So there were two possibilities. I just left figuring one of them would happen. But his relationship with Smerdyakov was closer, so he mistakenly thinks that it makes a moral difference, but it doesn't. In either case, he has let his wish become the action. You must understand this is an allegory of how evil generally happens. We have evil wishes, and indirectly, evil results from them. And you're wrong if only way you look for evil is a direct causal lie. It absolves you of your own responsibility. We all wish evil. Well, when we get to the third interview, Smerdyakov finally reveals how it all happens. And then, you are the real murderer. It was following your words that I did it. What? Were you the one who murdered him? You mean to say you didn't know? Why are you playing such a farce? But of course, he did know and he didn't know. Right? And why do you keep trembling like that? And he says to him twice, you were bold enough back then when you said, all is permitted. There is no such thing as morality, just causes. Why are your hands trembling? This is, by the way realist novels test ideas. In your philosophy class, you test them by evidence or logical coherence. But in novels, you give them a test by trying to live them. What happens if you think, and there are two ideas that get refuted here, that wishes have no moral value, and that all is permitted? Well, Ivan maintains both, but if all is permitted, and yet he feels guilty, evil has happened, and he knows it's not permitted by his own guilt. And the way wishes have become reality refutes that idea, you see. This is how realist novels work. They test what it is to live the idea. If you believe this, what will happen? Which is somewhat different from, does it follow from the premises? You keep saying, you were bold enough then when you said, if there is no God, all is permitted. And Ivan says, you're not a fool. It was your own pride that made you think I was stupid. Remember, the prosecutor will also talk about, why would Smerdyakov have a motive? And the defense attorney says, oh no, he's really smart. He only pretends to be stupid. And now I just want to pause for a moment about Smerdyakov's motives. There are a lot of problems here. Why does he kill Fyodor Pavlovich? Why does he involve Ivan in it? Why, if he did it for the money, does he give Ivan the money back? Why does he commit suicide? And he also manages to lie in a suicide note. Do you understand how that happens? There are certain situations which are generally assumed to be ones that guarantee you'll tell the truth. The idea is nobody lies in a suicide note because there's no gain to be gotten from it. And so, the prosecutor is able to say, look, he could have said, if he had done it, I did it, not Karamazov, but he didn't, which means he didn't do it. So he lies by silence, you understand? Why all these things? Well, there are two interpretations, one of which is the conventional one, and the other one of which is mine. And so if you want to tell people this interpretation, they'll say, oh, you study with Professor Morson, or at least with somebody who had read Professor Morson. Right? So here is my interpretation. The usual interpretation is he's a character who represents pure evil, but without a motive. There's an interpretation of Shakespeare's Iago and Othello which does that. There isn't any psychology here. The author has just put in a symbol of pure evil. So you don't psychologize. That's not impossible, but I think there's so much ample evidence that that's not what's going on. Smerdyakov clearly resents the fact that he, who is as much a brother of Ivan and Alyosha and Dmitri as they are to each other, that is, they're all half-brothers, is not treated as such. By his father, by his brothers. Dmitri just calls him the stinking valet. Even Alyosha comes to him and says, have you seen my brother Dmitri? Now think of how he would feel about that. He is the victim of neglect and contempt that the people who are doing it aren't even aware of. Fyodor Pavlovich might be aware of it. And from that sense, justified sense of being a victim, he seeks revenge. And think what he manages to do here. He kills his father. He destroys Dmitri because he set it up that Dmitri will be accused of the crime and sent to Siberia. He drives Ivan mad. That's why he gives him back the money. The money doesn't matter. Indeed, it's safer for him that the money be in Ivan's, though we can find it in his possession. He writes that false suicide note precisely with the interpretation in mind. It is a place where it is accepted that you're going to tell the truth is the perfect place to lie. I mean, an equivalent sort of thing is, if you want to make somebody believe you, arrange for them to be eavesdropping and think that you don't know it, okay? And they all believe you, because of course you're not saying it for them, because you're the only listening. So you can set it up that way. Or, listen, you go to a strange town, you're a compulsive fisherman, and you want to know where to fish. Well, it's obvious that the place to fish is wherever there's a no fishing sign, right? Because no one would put it there unless it's good fishing, right? It's that kind of logic. Okay? He manages to destroy everyone in his family but Alyosha. And I think it is because he's not acknowledged as a brother. Think of this symbolically. We don't acknowledge others as our brothers, but in this case it's literally true, and that brings you back to the title of the book, which now has more resonance than it did before. How many Brothers Karamazov are there? You've been thinking 3, but there are really 4. Granted, it's not his last name, but that's part of the problem. Okay? So I think there is sufficient psychology here. And if you look at the various scenes with Smirnikov, with Alyosha, with Dmitri, and just imagine, what are they thinking at that moment? You haven't been thinking that because you've been neglecting him too. Okay? But I think there is sufficient psychology to explain what he does. But again, if you tell other people that, they'll say, oh, I know who used to. We now go to another one of the really, really famous chapters in the book. Ivan's Nightmare. Actually, no, I want to go back to one thing before we get to it. Well, no, I'll come back to that. It's okay. Make more sense of it. Ivan goes back. Instead of going to confess that day, he's filled with this great resolution to do it the next day. He should do it right away, but he doesn't. He goes back to his room, and he is already going mad, and he is visited by the devil, or so he thinks. But it's not a devil that has ever appeared in theology or world literature before. Now, this image of the devil has been imitated many times since. But this is the first example. This is not the devil in the gigantic, evil, fire-breathing devil in Dante. Or Satan in Paradise Lost. The grand, dramatic, heroic conspirer of all fabulous evil. No. I know, he says, you're probably offended that I just appeared to you, like an ordinary guy, instead of coming with fire and brimstone and all that. You're offended because what, you think a great man like me visited by a paltry devil like that? So, what can I do if this is, this is what I really am. You angry with me for not having appeared to you in a red glow of thunder and lightning, with scorched wings, but I've shown myself in such a modest form. But listen, what if this is really what I am? I mean, they say such terrible things about me. You have no idea. They demonize me. If you've read Goethe's Faust, you know that Mephistopheles says, by the way, I'll just point out here,